Many people remember that you said that you wanted to select a vice president that had strengths and qualities that you don't have. So what strengths, qualities does Senator Harris have?
She has enormous strengths. I wanted someone who was strong and who was ready to be president on day one, and she's ready. And the other thing about Kamala is that when I called her and asked her to be my vice president, I said, and I'd like to ask you what Barack asked of me. I want you to be the last person in the room on every major decision, because I know she'll not be intimidated by the Oval Office. I know she'll not be reluctant to tell me exactly what she thinks. And I know she'll have a perspective different in many cases than mine, just with the nature of who we are and our backgrounds. And that's why I thought it was so important as well to have a woman as vice president.
You get the call, the Zoom call. Take us back to that moment.
It was an extraordinary, almost surreal. So the call was set up, it was scheduled. I had no idea what the content of the call or the conversation would be. You know, the great thing about Joe, he didn't build up the tension. He immediately said, let's do this.
Is the answer yes?
The answer is absolutely yes, Joe, and I am ready to work.
And, you know, I'm so honored, and I told him that then, and I feel it, to serve with him, to go through not only the campaign with him, but to fight to win this election. I do strongly believe Joe is the person for this moment to lead our country. And I feel very committed to doing everything I can to help him in every way.
Your next Vice President of the United States, Kamala Harris.
Kamala Harris.
What?
When Senator Kamala Harris was announced as Biden's running mate, girls saw new possibilities.
You know, my daughters see themselves in her. And I think for women of color around the country today, they feel seen and heard.
She's the child of immigrants. Her mother, a scientist. Her father, an economist. They met and married at grad school in California.
Kamala's mother is Indian and her father was Jamaican.
But her mother raised her and Maya as black women, because that's what they were.
Shamala, Kamala's mother, was one of the leading scientists in this country, if not across the world, you know, for cancer research.
She really impressed upon Kamala and Maya to be great.
Every school day of the year in Berkeley, the buses move almost 3,500 children across town.
Harris was bused beginning in first grade, taken to a predominantly white school where she thrived. She grew up to become a prosecutor, then attorney general, then a U.S. senator. Harris met her husband, Doug, a lawyer, on a blind date.
You got some family out here?
Thank you. Come on, family.
Her blended family shows her heritage, and her stepchildren call her Mamala.
My mother, who, you know, at the age of 25, you know, gave birth to me at Kaiser Hospital in Oakland, California. At that time, there was no way that she thought that this is how things would work out. So, you know, I think about her looking down, being very proud, and that's very humbling.
This is not the first time that you are a first, and you said something about your mama which made me think of mine.
Yeah.
It's an honor to be first, and do what you can to make sure you're not last.
That's what my mother said. That was her advice. She said, Kamala, you may be the first to do many things, but make sure you're not the last. But I want to say something about Joe in terms of this selection. You know, we talk about what it means to be progressive. Joe really walks the talk. I'll remind everyone that Joe was one of the first Democrats to speak out in terms of LGBTQ rights and equality. He just did it. Joe, in selecting a woman of color to be his vice president, what an, audacious move. The audacity of Joe Biden to actually just make that decision and then follow through on it.
Mr. Vice President, you made it clear early on that you were going to select a woman to be your running mate. You select a woman of color. Did you do that to rally your base, and did you feel pressure to select a black woman?
No, I didn't feel pressure to select a black woman, but what I do think is that the government should look like the people, look like the country. 51% of the people in this country are women. And in order to be able to succeed, you've got to be dealt in across the board. And no matter what you say, I cannot understand and fully appreciate what it means to walk in her shoes, to be an African-American woman with an Indian-American background, a child of immigrants. She can't assume exactly what it's like to walk in my shoes. What we do know is we have the same value set.
But there's that debate.
And that little girl was me.
People are hearing the glowing things that you're saying and believing these things that you're saying about the vice president, but they're also remembering, can't get past the debate. A lot of people cannot let that go the way you challenged him. So how did you go from there to here?
I want Joe Biden to be the next president of the United States. I believe in Joe Biden. I believe in his perspective. And frankly, I think that conversation is a distraction from what we need to accomplish right now and what we need to do. We're looking at a situation where tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of Americans have died in the last few months, where millions, tens of millions of people have become unemployed. And Joe Biden has not only a plan, but a deeply rooted commitment to take care of folks. And we certainly have one thing in common in this election, in addition to all the policies, which is Donald Trump should not be president of the United States. And so that's where I'm focused.
There's a link between these candidates that holds friendship and tragedy. It's Joe Biden's son, Beau. You speak about Beau and how, in essence, he introduced you to Kamala Harris. There's another bond there in that something that many people can relate to, a club that no one wants to belong to, and that's when it comes to cancer and what it can do.
You know.
And you both lost a loved one. Your mother was a cancer researcher.
Yes, she was.
And was taken by the disease. Is this a bond also that you all have in sharing?
It is, and Joe and I have actually talked about the experience, which is an awful experience that far too many Americans have also experienced. He and I have talked about the trips to the hospital for chemotherapy with your loved one. We talked about, when my mother was sick, there was a doctor who came up to me and said, has anyone talked to you about anticipatory grief? And I'd never heard that term, but it makes perfect sense, which is you are deeply grieving someone you've not yet lost. It is definitely a shared experience. And one thing to add to that point, though, about this election and the shared experience that actually the three of us have, is the issue of the Affordable Care Act. And let's remember that it was Joe Biden with President Barack Obama that made that happen, that brought health coverage to tens of millions of people. And right now, Donald Trump is in court trying to get rid of the Affordable Care Act. And if he's successful, over 20 million people will lose their health coverage.
And it strips so many people of their dignity, knowing they can't provide for the people who are ill. That's not going to happen on our watch. It's just not going to happen no matter what this guy does.